Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Now a couple of things before we get started. First of all, I caught a pretty bad cold. I was fighting against it last week, but on Friday it just broke through. I lost the battle, and so now if my voice is a little bit strange or I need to cough and stuff like that, that's why. It's pretty damn bad. I tried to sleep for like 12 hours before starting EVE Talk. Hopefully I'll be able to do all of this in one take. Next up, as you probably saw in my latest video, I also lost quite a few settings on my client, so as a result I lost everything for EVE Talk as well, so I have to get back into bringing all of that back online. I tried to do my best. I think we're pretty damn close. Things have changed as well. For instance, I now numbered the folders, so it's a little bit easier for me to go through all of those steps. Yeah, we'll try to get this to work, and we'll see how it goes. But there's perhaps some things, maybe with the charts, that may not be the way they were before exactly, but I think everything should be workable. So as always, we are here for the market. Let's get started, and we'll start with plex at 120. Like that. And so now it's the top folder, plex stuff, which we can start off with plex. They are pretty much flat, maybe even down a little bit at the very end of things. I think I have the filter correct at this point. So okay, there's 501 plex coming in for 3,100,000 ISK right here in Jita, but this is definitely an outlier sell order that will be picked up by the market decently quickly. We could say that 3,128,000 is the current sell price in the perimeter trade hub, so in the player owned trade hubs with the lowest possible taxes. Then we have to go down quite a little bit until we get back to Jita at 3.2 million. The buyers are at 3,089,000 ISK, and if we go down looking for a Jita station, they are down here to 3,076,000 ISK, so a bit less of a difference when it comes to the buyers than the sellers. And in general, plex are still well above 3 million, so above 1.5 billion for a full month. Although, yeah, here we can see that there is some people willing to sell at these prices, and they're at least keeping the price from shooting up all too quickly at this point. Next up, we'll take a look at the multiple pilot training certificates. That looks like a more interesting chart, of course, has a little bit more volatility, going from around 1.3 billion back up to 1.46 billion. You can see though that this was obviously a decrease in price on a special sale because of the volumes here, and volumes going back down to less than 50 a day make this a very tricky market. Still, they are being sold for 1.5 billion and 30 million ISK, so quite expensive, and the buyers are at 1.45 billion ISK, and in Jita 1.55 billion for a multiple pilot training certificate, which is, I think, pretty much as expensive as 30 days in true plex. So perhaps this needs to correct back just a little bit to be in line with the regular stuff. But yeah, if plex goes on sale and this doesn't at the same time, you could get this strange discrepancy between the two. What is going to follow plex a little bit more closely, of course, are the skill extractors. Here at the tail end here, latest median daily price actually up above 20-day moving average, so that is a little bit strange. Let's take a quick look at the numbers here. 352.4 million for the sellers of skill extractors, and the buyers are at 349 million. It's a very, very tiny margin when it comes to plex. If we take a quick look back here, that one sell order, as expected, has been picked up. So 3,129,000, and the buyers are at 3,089,000. 100,000 ISK difference is also not all that much, to be honest. So at the moment, we are basically in a quiet period for plex and skill extractors. Now the skill injectors, that could be different. Yeah, it is different. These are clearly going down a little bit in price, heading back to less than 800 million ISK. Okay, quite interesting. 784 million for the sellers. That's quite a bit lower all of a sudden. So let's take a quick look if I can get the 800 million chart. Yeah, we've been below that for a little bit, but we can clearly see that there is some pressure on when it comes to the large skill injectors. which is strange. This might actually turn around in December when the alpha clones get access to way more skills all of a sudden. The buyers are at 773 million ISK, so also not a very wide margin between the two. And then the small skill injectors, we can again look at the chart, also under pressure. 5-day moving average staying well below the 20-day moving average. At the tail end a little bit more hesitation, but the trend in general since late October has been down. 158 million for the sellers, 153 for the buyers. And so, yeah, not much to say. Slight pressure, maybe a little bit less demand for skill points, which I think might speak up with CCP's plan to change the alpha clones. And the other stuff is pretty much flat at the moment. And there we go. Need to blow my nose for a second. So I'll do that and then we'll move on to the second category. There we go, trying to do that away from the mic a little bit. I hope it doesn't disturb you guys too much. Let's move on to some minerals at 6 minutes. 600. Titanium, as you can see here, was under pressure for pretty much the entire month of October. We are apparently bottoming out a little bit here at the current price range of around 4.5, I would say, a little bit above that. So we're not at the March bottom just yet, but we are obviously not in a very good spot for titanium. Titanium, we can take out these filters. 469 for the sellers, that's down a little bit from last week. Buyers are at 466, so that margin has basically closed down here, which means that of course the bottom is forming at around 470. Some investors will probably start coming in here with like 2 billion units, for instance, and the sellers though keep coming, 1 billion, 2 billion, 1 billion. We have to be a little bit careful. That's like 3-4 billion units coming in at 475, a little bit below that, and we've got several billion again at just above 5. This does not bode well for titanium. It's going to be very hard for the market to find a higher price with all of those sell orders. So as a result, it's under pressure. Very bad news for high-sec miners. Pyrite looks even worse. It's basically settling down, but at the lowest point of the year for less than 5 ISK. That's definitely pretty damn cheap. A little bit of a volume increase, so some people are buying, and I think that basically that means we'll see the sellers and the buyers come closer together. 484 for the sellers, 476 for the buyers. That's exactly as expected. The bad news though is still 2 billion units coming in at 5 ISK, and 498. We've got another 200 million, another 200 million at 491. So the price is gonna stay below 5 ISK for the foreseeable future. Any new supply is gonna have to compete with this kind of stuff at 490. And now we've got some buyers, but even they are very hesitant on pyrite with pretty small volumes. You have to go to 470 before you see 300 million units being bought. So not good news for pyrite. Let's see what Mexalon's been doing. Ouch, that is something that I've dreaded for a pretty long time. Mexalon was the one beacon of light for the high-sec miners. It was really the one mineral you could still focus on that was giving you a better price than before the Ascension expansion. Here we can see though that pressure is on. Too much supply is coming in for this as well. Increased volumes, decreased prices, doesn't look too good. Sellers are now at 62 ISK, first one coming in, 65.40 for the next one, and buyers are at 61.24. So we had a very good run even with the Ascension expansion. 75.80 ISK, managed to maintain that for quite a while, and after the summer we went back up to 80, managed to stay in the 75 to 80 price band for quite a while. Tried to defend 70, but now that that's been broken, we are straight down towards 60 ISK for Mexalon, which is, well, it's still okay, but it's definitely not what we've been used to for the most of the year here. So Mexalon coming under pressure would be one of those indications that it's indeed not just the Imperium, which would normally be seeing like a bottleneck for its Mexalon, more demand for that coming from nullsec. Perhaps with the moon mining, with the first moon chunks being blown up and being mined, they are managing more Mexalon supply from nullsec in general, and so yeah, that moon mining may actually be what is going to cost us efficiency when it comes to high-sec mining, because there might be more Mexilon mixed in on the supply side of nullsec from now on. So we'll see how that evolves. That is definitely a possible theory for the deterioration of the price of Mexilon here. Investors, they always want to be a bit of a step ahead when it comes to things happening in the market, and they may be reading that exact same thing, seeing, oh well, moon mining activity is picking up, that's gonna mean more Mexilon supplies in nullsec, thus lower demand here in the trade hubs. Next up, we've got Isogen looking pretty bad as well. At least it's bouncing off when the price broke 45 ISK on the downside. So again, 1 year low on a little bit of a volume increase. An investor jumped in on that opportunity, but it's not like we're taking off from here. 45.18 for the sellers, 43.37 for the buyers. Extremely cheap Isogen, even cheaper than Mexilon. We also have Noxium that basically tried last week what Isogen is trying this week, right? Bit of a jump up in price back to more than 350 ISK, but already having to give back around 334. We are back at that pretty damn low point. Sellers 330, buyers 318. Buyers coming in at less than 320 ISK for Noxium is pretty cheap. Again, the volumes are probably a little bit out of whack. 11 million, 16 million, 14 million coming in here on the seller side in the last 24 hours. It's actually a decent volume. You have one buyer at 316.75 that is trying to buy 30 million ISK. The rest of them are saying no thank you, keep your minerals for yourself. So high-sec is having a pretty rough time at the moment. You're not getting lots of efficiency for your ores, for the ores that you mined, or the time you spend mining for those. I would say if you can afford to wait, then I would personally wait for something to happen. Maybe a shift like a war or something like that, that will bring back some Tech 1 demand, increase the demand for minerals. That is probably what I would wait for if you have the time, of course. Sometimes you have to sell as well. Next up for nullsec, we've got Zytron coming under pressure as well, heading back for 1000 ISK. 9, actually the first seller, that's crazy, less than 1000 ISK again. The bars are at 975. Zytron clearly under pressure. The chart has yet to catch up on what's happening today. And then we've got a Megasite as well, coming under pressure too. It's almost inevitable, heading for 1125. Sellers are at 1130. Buyers are at 1045. Is pretty cheap Mexilon, pretty wide margin as well. I think more than, yeah, way more than Zytron, which means that Mexilon Megasite might actually be coming under pressure even more and heading to like 1050 ISK. It's definitely in the cards. If you look at the volumes, 10 million, 8 million, several more million coming in here in all of that in the last 24 hours. Whereas the buyers, well, they're down here at 1045 ISK for like a couple 100,000 units at the most. Very opportunistic buying here, which would make sense. That's also, if I would want some Megasite, I would of course put up a buy order in this market right here. And then finally we also have Morphite, the Tech 2 related mineral that is also coming under pressure. 9,200 on the chart, 9,100 for the sellers, 8,900 for the buyers. Buyers coming below 9,000. That was a pretty sharp run up in September that is now already over. We can already start looking at maybe a buy opportunity for Morphite if you're looking for that mineral investment. It does seem that any war in nullsec tends to also involve lots of smaller Tech 2 ships and tends to be a nice driver for Morphite. If you compare this chart to, well, not to Mexilon, because Mexilon has been an exception, but to Pyrite for instance, or to Tritanium, then Morphite I think is more like winter war, maybe something like that. And then in September here I think we also had a war, bit of an impact on that as well because of Tech 2 ship losses. So this one does remain a pretty interesting one if you're looking for that mineral investment with maybe a little bit of a smaller horizon than the other minerals, because those have been in trouble for most of the year, it must be said. Next up we'll be moving on to some PI at 1420. Like that. I may have missed some. I just quickly grabbed what I remembered, but I definitely missed something because I don't think we started off with broadcast nodes. Maybe I added some different stuff as well. So at this point, you know, if you have some suggestions for stuff you want me to add, maybe to the PI bar, minerals is alright, plex stuff is alright as well. PI seems a little bit less than last week, and well, I didn't really feel like I had the time. You know, I'm gonna be strapped for time pretty soon here. To go back and try to get everything one-on-one. I don't think it's that important either. Getting a general feel of the market is nice. Broadcast nodes, so this is, I think, a different advanced PI material that I added here. We can clearly see the lifeblood spike here with the new refineries. Lots of demand for that, went up to 2.8 million ISK pretty much, and now it's already back down to 2.3 million. Regular price is probably buyers close to 2 million, so keep that in mind when we're looking at the numbers. 2.2 million for the sellers, 2.1 million for the buyers. Not bad. That's definitely a pretty big comeback here for the broadcast nodes, making those affordable, I would say, if you're looking to get started on your own refinery and you still have to buy up these advanced PI materials. Broadcast nodes do seem to be back at a reasonable price. Construction blocks next. These one are going down in price again pretty sharply. 11,000. Let's take a look at sellers and the buyers. 11,700 for sellers, 11,000 for the buyers. I think we had a buy opportunity here that I tried to take advantage of. Didn't really get the volumes that I wanted, but we are basically very close to a second one. I would prefer to see the buyers at less than 11,000 ISK. That means that you can try to pick up some of that really cheap supply of construction blocks, but right now it's definitely below average. You can clearly see that on the charts. Potentially again you could try to stock up on some cheap construction blocks. Consumer electronics next, also clearly under pressure, heading down towards 10k. This is actually pretty interesting, pretty sharp at the tail end here. 11,400 for the sellers, 10,600 for the buyers. I'm liking the buyers, 10,600. Let's see if we can get like a visual of that. Not very easily, but that's probably around here. So this tail end here, this one median daily price here as well on today. Yep, slight opportunity. Construction blocks like 12,500, maybe even a little bit more on average. We're below average for consumer electronics, and the buyers seem to be pretty low. Coolants next, bouncing off a little bit from that low. You can also see increased volume, so some people did jump in at around 9,600 ISK, bring the price back closer to 10k. 10,049 for the sellers, 9,700 for the buyers. I would say for the longer horizon, if you look at the entire chart, coolants are still in a great spot if you want to buy some. Definitely way below average. I wouldn't sell my coolants in this market. But the very bottom does already seem to have been formed at like 9,500. That may be over. There are lots of eyes on the PI market. It is a very interesting one, and I would say that if you're looking for that PI investment, then coolants look pretty good. Construction blocks, yeah, look pretty nice as well. Consumer electronics as well, pretty sharp drop off here, so seems pretty damn interesting. Lots of the fuel related ones. Here is enriched uranium going down as well, breaking 12,000 ISK or 12,500 ISK without too much effort. Sellers 12,984, probably around average. Buyers 12,000, probably below average, right? Definitely below 12,500 ISK here. If we look at this entire chart again, enriched uranium is actually in buy order territory. Next up, we've got the integrity response drones. That's another advanced one tied to the refineries. Here we can see a spike up to like 4 million ISK. That was a little bit close to sustained. We are going back down, of course. Average 2.5 million, 2.8 for the buyers, 2.43 for the sellers, 2.8, sorry, and for the buyers 2.43. So if you're looking for some integrity response drones, put up a buy order on 2.5 million. You're very likely to actually pick those up at a reasonable price once again, just a couple of weeks after the expansion. This has actually been the pattern, and this was expected. The more structures are out, the more people know what to expect. The shallower and the shorter the price spikes will be on these deployments. Mechanical parts next, again really fuel related, heading back to that 1 year low. Less than 10k, 10,200 for the sellers, 9,500 for the buyers. Again, if you look at this chart, pretty cheap ones, and the time to buy. Self-harmonizing power cores next, going down in price as well. Spike is up to, let's see here, 3.6 million. Regular price 2 million on the buyers. Let's see where we're at. 2.6 million for the buyers, 2.7 for the sellers. Still a ways to go, although we are of course going down from that high point as well. Superconductors next. Oh, that's unexpected. A very sharp drop off to 10k here as well on massive volumes. So 11,000 for the sellers, 10,100 for the buyers. Way below average, I would say. Again, another PI opportunity. Don't go too crazy in this, because at this point I could be spending billions of ISK in this personally. But I am going to do a little bit of shopping, I think, if I look at these charts. Test cultures next. That one is probably used a lot in the advanced PI material, so also knew this spike up to 15,000 ISK. Settling at around 10,700. Yeah, 11,100 for the sellers, 10,000 for the buyers. Lack of demand is pretty obviously here, so any more supply is going to put more and more pressure on this price. But again, keep in mind what happened with my test culture investment. I bought for like less than 8,000 ISK. I bought several times, and I had to have a really long wait until the actual launch of the expansion, until I had an opportunity to sell at a profit. So I definitely prefer these fuel related ones a little bit more, because they seem to be a bit more volatile, providing you with more opportunities more often. But test cultures at the moment still a little bit high as well, of course. And then finally we have wetware mainframes that also knew a high point of like almost 3.5 million. Currently heading down on the chart to 2.5 million. 2 million would be nice, but doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we would normally get. 225, something like that is possible. 2.7 million for the sellers, 2.4 million for the buyers. Again, we still have a little bit of a ways to go, but it's definitely already quite a bit more affordable than during the expansion. I definitely am open to suggestions for some other PI stuff. I feel like there's some that I've missed that I haven't added that could be interesting to add, because I think here it makes it look like PI, the refined ones, except for the ones related to directly to the refineries, like the advanced ones, are all coming into very low territory, and I thought that it was a more nuanced picture with some of the other ones. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. I'm actually going to try and fix that right now. It was some specialized ones that are definitely important. So we had, was it supercomputers? No. Let's see if I can find the stuff that I'm looking for. Nuclear reactors. There we go. Let's add this one to the quick bar, and then we also had the fuel related one, which is the robotics. Add to the quick bar. Let's quickly fix that, because these are important as well. PI. And so here are the nuclear reactors, for instance, a specialized PI material that is very much needed in the advanced ones. Went up to 2 million, giving back a little bit of ground as well. Regular price 100,000 ISK, maybe a little bit above that, still selling for 114. Buyers though at 98,700 are back on average. And so yeah, it does seem to be coming together here, that we do have a pretty general picture of low prices in PI. Robotics as well, related to fuels, well below 100,000 ISK. We've been above that for such a long time. I was wondering if we'd ever get back there, but yep, sellers 94,000 ISK, buyers 88,000 ISK for robotics, less than 90,000 ISK. I would say that that's almost a no-brainer as well. Look into PI if you're looking into investment opportunities. All of these charts seem to be heading in that direction. Next up, we'll take a look at some Tech 1 chips. That's going to be at 2330. There we go. I just did a grabbing of stuff that could be interesting. I'm basically thinking of going a little bit more quickly on these, not looking too much at volumes and details. We know by now the general trend in the Tech 1 market is a bit of a lack of demand, a lack of interest. The bigger the ship, the bigger you're gonna see the impact of the mineral market on it. And then there are these outliers, which I've tried to add some of them, which are like in the meta for nullsec, for instance, like the Caracal, and I also tried to grab a couple of like ganking ships that might be interesting. So here's the Apocalypse, for instance. We can clearly see on the chart that the Apocalypse is pretty damn low. Average prices at the moment around 150 million is pretty damn cheap for an Amarr battleship. And now we're getting our warning for the cluster shutdown. We still have 1 hour, so we'll make it without too much trouble. Here is the Caracal chart. That is more interesting, of course. Caracal often in the meta. I think once Alpha Clones will be able to use Tech 2 weapons, that we might see even more interest in this ship. And as a result, we do have these spikes from around 9.5 million. That seems to be a trigger point where an alliance does come in with bigger volumes, driving up the price to like 11 million. And here at the tail end, we're basically coming back down from another one of these spikes on an increased volume. So there is alliance buying, which creates opportunities in some of these ships. Let's take a quick look at the Catalyst here. Catalyst, I don't think is like a Gnostic meta, but it's often used to gank. And here we can also see this is at 2 million some buys. That's a little bit weird. In general, 1 million, we are definitely at a pretty low point for these. But I think that from time to time you can see these spikes here. You can see these volume increases. That is an indication that sometimes bigger groups do stack up some catalysts when they become very cheap. Also grabbed some frigates, but yeah, cruiser fire, this is definitely not a chart we can do a lot with, so I'm actually going to remove this one. Next up, the Drake. I'm bringing this guy back. He's such an iconic ship that I think taking a look at that one could be interesting, and I think that this one is actually pretty interesting. If you look at this entire chart here, although we're definitely mostly staying below 50 million ISK for the Drake, which is pretty damn cheap for a battle cruiser, we do see this wartime here, September, October. I think this was a wartime with the Imperium on the move, basically. You do see this increased interest, and you see this increased price for them. A bit of a sell opportunity at more than 50 million for Drakes. At the moment, unfortunately, we're pretty low, well below 47.5 million for Drakes. Next up here, we've got the Ferox, another one that is often used in a nullsec, and so you do have these, again here, volume increase. This was around the war, going up to 65 million. Is here at the tail end, in fact, we're back up above 50 million as well. So it's looking pretty good for the Ferox. This is one, for instance, with this kind of volatility and these highs that you know is in a meta for nullsec and is potentially a pretty good BPO to pick up. Hurricane should be the same. I think that that test, for instance, does fly Hurricanes, but doesn't look like it's happening too much. You've got the war spike, but that's really it. It's been under pressure and staying below 50 million since then. The Megatron, I grabbed another battleship here, which is a Galente one this time. Basically also under pressure here with the lower minerals. That's what I'm reading from this. Going down from almost 180 to around 160 million at the moment. I'll take a quick look at it, but you can clearly see here 1, 2 is most of those sell orders. The volumes aren't there. There is some demand. It is a Megatron, but in station not that many sell orders. And as a result here, the volumes less than 50 a day for the Megatron. It's more than some, but it's definitely still not great. Quick look at the Merlin chart. Okay, we actually see something on the Merlin chart. That's interesting. Currently going for 400,000 ISK, and that's definitely above average. A pretty good time for the Merlins here. I grabbed the Oracle as well. I think that that's sometimes flown. This increase in price here does show that I think Oracle fleets have their place in a nullsec. Unfortunately, at the tail end here, lots of dumping happening, and we are currently looking at very cheap Oracles for less than 70 million ISK. That could mean that a big buyout might be coming soon. Taking a look at the Raven, one of the very iconic Caldari battleships as well, currently stable at 160. Again, a bit of interest in September. I don't think this is going to be war related. That looks a little bit late for that. But other than that, definitely pretty cheap as well. Traded around 50, a little bit more than a Megatron, but not by that much. The Retriever for the interest in the mining barges, up to 25 million. Definitely above average, but this could definitely be short-lived as well. This might be tied to the resource wars, I think. Could be why there is some interest in Retrievers. The Rifter, that's just too flat. We're never gonna get anything useful out of that. Yeah, the frigates, those are so small, easy to make. That's gonna be very tricky to find anything. out here. The Rupture, let's take a look at that. One war spike, that's really it. So sorry Rupture, I think I'm gonna remove you as well. It's a pretty terrible chart. That'll need some fixing, and that's gonna take like another 11 months. The Tempest next. Here is a Minmatar, a battleship, again around 160, some increased volumes, but those increased volumes are actually up to 50. So that does show that the Megatron and the Raven are actually traded quite a lot compared to most of the other ones. What was the Apocalypse looking like? Yeah, like less than 20 a day. And here the Tempest on average less than 25. Now a bit of an outlier from 50 once the price reached 150, bringing us back up to 170. And at the moment it's on its way back down to 160. So Thrasher next here, pretty also definitely a ganking ship. I see those constantly on the gates towards Jita. And you've got a wartime. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit late though again. Spike here, but currently under pressure as well at 1 million ISK. Tornado next. If you're looking to gag something bigger, definitely want some tornadoes in the mix. This is a pretty interesting chart here actually, going from 60 to 75 million. Quite a bit of volatility. Price spikes up to like 75 million during the war as well. That to me is pretty interesting. Increased volumes at the tail end here as well. Increased prices, some volatility. I like the tornado chart. This is actually like the one take one ship so far, where there's some action to be seen. There's some stuff all over the place. That is pretty unusual and pretty interesting. Definitely one that will keep. The Tristan here, okay, actually also showing something on the chart, which is nice. High of 700,000, low of 400,000 currently, basically at a low point after a very temporary spike due to volumes here. Next up we've got the Venture. I'm also looking at that one for the Resource Wars. So that one is definitely up in price a little bit, currently for around a little bit less than 250,000 ISK, and that is going to be of course because if you try to take this one into a tier 2 resource war, you're probably gonna lose it. They're very useful for tier 1, so there's some renewed interest in the Venture. I think thanks to the Resource Wars. And then finally we have the Vexor as well, back up to 11 million, a little bit of volatility in that. So quick look at the Tech 1 markets. I'm definitely open to suggestions on how to handle this category, because it's a pretty difficult one at the moment. Just because there is this lack of interest the bigger the ship goes. Well, maybe with alpha clones it could be interesting to keep it like this for now, and to see if maybe the battle cruisers and then eventually the battleships go up in interest once the alpha clones can skill up for them. So that's maybe a possibility, but we'll see. We'll see how we handle Tech 1. Tech 2, I've added quite a few of these as well. Actually, I went through some of this, although it's definitely in line with what we had previously. Basically, I think I don't have the cruisers, the logistics cruisers, but I did add a couple of command destroyers. So mostly frigates, destroyers, and then a couple of cruisers in there just to get a feel of those. But the smaller ships I feel are the most interesting when it comes to potentially in trade. Just because they're at like the right price range and volumes for some reason. So here is the Ares, for instance. At the moment, of course, moon mining has driven up the price and it's not looking like it's moving anywhere. The Ares is still selling for 36 million. Buyers are 25 million. Those buyers have definitely gone down. So a bit of less interest. The potential seems to be on the downside, but at the moment the price is not budging. Cerberus, that's definitely a new one, very popular cruiser of course. And here is the War Spike, here is another spike. I think this could be because of the Crimson Harvest. Cerberus is an extremely good ship for that, and as a result here actually going for a pretty high price. Also of course, perhaps the moon mining is driving up the price of the Cerberus, currently selling for 264 million. 249 for the buyers. We've got the Claw next, settling a little bit below 40 million ISK. 36.3 for the sellers, 31 for the buyers. Still, of course, that moon mining change premium to be paid here. Next up, we've got the Crow, very similar situation. Selling for 32, buyers are 28.6, a little bit under pressure here. That's quite interesting, but definitely still paying the premium. Crusader next, I added I think all interceptors, not exactly sure. Up above 30 million ISK, selling for 32, buyers are at 29 million. Again, we can clearly see the higher trade range because of the expansion. The Heretic, again going back up to 80 million ISK. Interdictors extremely expensive at the moment, 80 million for the sellers, 68 for the buyers. A little bit of volatility, that makes it interesting. You want to sell at the moment, of course, but if you see this dip again to less than 70 million ISK, you know, you might want to take the risk, who knows. The Houndstelle Bomber keeps going up as well, up above 35 million apparently, 36 for the sellers, 27 for the buyers. Wide margin here again, so that potential for going down is there, but we would of course need to see the moon mining potential show itself. I grabbed the Ishtar as well, currently at a 1-year high, very expensive, 282 for the sellers, 267 million actually for the buyers. If you have Ishtars that you don't use, you might want to look into selling them, into monetizing those 1-year highs. Very high price at the moment. We've got the Manticore actually taking off as well to a 1-year high, selling currently for 40 million. ISK buyers are at 33 million. Again, stealth bombers, very popular, and that premium had to be paid, of course, when it comes to the expansion. But here the Manticore is actually doing the exact opposite, going to a 1-year high price, even higher, where the Ares, for instance, I think because of the buyers here, has the potential to go back down. The Manticore is showing the exact opposite. So in my opinion, for the actual impact of the expansion on moon mining and Tech 2 production, it's still up in the air when we look at the Tech 2 ships. The Nemesis down in price a little bit, but still holding at 35 million ISK, 41 for the sellers, 34 for the buyers, again showing very high prices. Pontifex is a new one, Command Destroyer, that I added. Very similar pattern, right? Normally 50 to 60 million. Then we have a bit of speculation. The expansion hits here up to almost 90 million ISK, currently settling at 79 for the sellers, 69 for the buyers. It's that premium that's clearly visible. Purifier, same thing, actually taking off as well here. Are we above 35 for this? Yeah, 43 for the sellers, 28 for the buyers. A lack of supply coming in here. Purifiers at a 1-year high if you can sell those. Raptor next, that one is actually settling around 35 million, a little bit less than that probably, but coming in here latest. Someone came in, probably sellers 41 million, buyers 33 million. Again, same story. The Saber actually knew a price up to almost 100 million ISK. Is that right? Yeah, that is right. 90 million and above. And now is settling down at 73 on the chart. But look at the normal price, 50 to 60 is the normal price for a Saber. So 73 million for the sellers, 68.5 for the buyers. Very expensive again. Stiletto at a high point as well, 35 million, 34.6 for the sellers, 31 for the buyers. The Stork, another Command Destroyer, look at that, 1-year high again, more than 90 million ISK, 94 for the sellers, 88 million for the buyers. That's the Stork, look at that. You can definitely sell those for a pretty nice price. And then finally I also added the Tyrannis, which is clearly showing that pattern, right? Before the expansion, 20 to 25 million, pretty stable, way too stable to actually speculate on. So actually that's the reason why we weren't checking on that one. But here we go, the expansion comes in and we are now paying that premium up to 33 million for the sellers, 30 million for the buyers, 10 million premium, a third of the price. And at the moment, I would say from this market, it's looking like it could still go either way. Some of them are so empty that they're still hitting 1-year highs right now, and others are, well, settling, and the buyers are just not willing to follow up. So quite interesting in my opinion. Next up, Tech 3 ships at 38 minutes. I think I forgot to write down the Tech 2 market timestamp, but we'll fix that in post. So Tech 3 Confessor actually taking off to 60 million. That's quite interesting. Bit of lack of supply to my surprise. I thought we'd see oversupply by now, but nope. 60 million for the sellers, 52 for the buyers. Could be my video, I don't know, there was a lot of interest for the fit that I used during the wartime. I think the Confessor is an incredible ship for that. It's fast, versatile, you can make it very tanky, you can make it very good at dealing damage, and It's just such a great all-around chip that that I absolutely enjoyed flying that during the war, and I'm going to build more of them throughout all of my bases of operations. So maybe a slight increase in interest because of the video. It is possible. Otherwise, well, it's probably a lack of supply as well that's helping the price to go up to 60 million. Not bad. Hecate here settling at around 50 on decent supplies, but nothing too crazy. 50.60 million for the sellers, 46 million for the buyers. Next up, we've got the Jackdaw. Also a recommendation that I got in the comments there. It's definitely a ship that I want to look at, just haven't really found the time to fit one up and to test it out, but that's definitely on my radar as well. I think missiles are really great as well, especially if you're looking for that quick PvE ship that you could use in more risky situations. The Jackdaw is definitely up there as well, settling at 50 million as well. A little bit more supply. You look at that, 75, 65, price going down to 46 million ISK, 43 for the buyers. You could almost say that Jackdaws are under pressure a little bit from that slight oversupply. It's nothing too crazy yet, but you're definitely paying less for these than the previous two. And then finally we have this Vapel as well, settling less than 50 million ISK. Tried to break out, but didn't work out, so we should see some fresh supply here. Yep, decent, 30, 16, 76 here. It's not going to help if you're looking for higher prices, but this doesn't seem completely out of line. So again, 49 million for the sellers, 41.5 for the buyers. That's the Sveep pool settling as well. So general trend here, except for the Confessor with a pretty unusual lack of volume, increase in price up to 60 million. Most of those are settling and looking okay. Then we've got the cruisers. Here is the Legion, slight spike up, and we are looking at 160 million for the Legion, 165 for the sellers, 151 for the buyers. Supply wise, there's a decent amount of it, but this is a little bit older as well, so I would say that this is not crazy if we look at the last 24 hours. Next up, we've got the Loki, of course, big winner, still staying at that 1-year high price point, selling for 237 million ISK. Buyers are at 215. We've got decent supply, but basically I think that they can't pump out the ship fast enough at the moment. So you're paying most for the Loki. It's a great Tech 3 cruiser, of course. Proteus next, actually finally slightly going up in price, a little bit in a seesaw motion here, settling above 130 apparently. 138 million for the sellers, 125 for the buyers, but the bad news is 320, 60, 65. You can see that the potential for overproduction definitely exists in the Tech 3 market. This means I would say that that we're not going to continue to seesaw up here for the Proteus. It's probably going to settle down a little bit actually. And then finally we have the Tengu that is staying below 180, also trying to find its price range. But again with the bad news here, right? This looks good, right? We're getting great price for the Tengu, and what is coming in? 420, 420, 115. It is a little bit older, so that must be said. What's the Proteus? Pretty curious about those. Yeah, those are a bit more recent. But this is basically going to cut any potential out of the Tengu from really going back up in price all too much. 165 for the sellers, 155 for the buyers. At the moment, I would say the Tech 3 market looks pretty healthy. There is this risk of oversupply, but you also have these spurts of interest in the Confessor, for instance, in the Loki at the moment, that keeps things volatile and interesting for an investor. Next up, of course, we've got the extra product. It is at 42.45. There we go. And of course we have to take a look at Moon stuff, because Tech 2 market is not really going anywhere, not giving us all too much information. So let's go for where are we looking at? Reaction materials. I'll start with the advanced Moon materials, take a quick look at those. This is interesting to me. Look at that, crystalline carbonite actually going down in price back to 190. Fresh supply, yeah, some amounts here, 24 million for instance. So after going up to almost 220, currently is selling for 194 ISK. So here we see the first pullback on an advanced Moon material. Fermionic condensate still pretty high, but also a little bit under pressure at the tail end. I think that this is quite interesting. Fernite carbide, bit of a spike and actually already back down to 175. A little bit above average still, but you can again see the downtrend. The real question is going to be, where will we settle? Of course, lots of these spikes and 1-year highs were on speculation after the expansion, so a little bit of a pullback is normal, but we would need to see ferrogel around 30k, where the buyers were still at 40k, before we could say that we've settled back, and we know that supplies are still in line with what they were before the expansion. So ferrogel also down a little bit. Fullerite, that's a bit more volatile and actually settling above 1000 ISK. That would not be too great, of course. That would be one first indication that at the moment supplies are not anywhere near what they were before the expansion. 1062 for the sellers, but also 1015 for the buyers, where usually you would see 750 as a normal Fullerite price. Hypersynaptic fibers, obviously under pressure finally as well, settling at 12.5 thousand, still a ways to go. Nanotransmitters, very same thing. So volumes coming in the last week or so, I think that's basically the first production starting to come in. So I would say that we could still go either way. We still have to see what the actual yields will be. Phenolic composites, for instance, still at a 1-year high price of around 3000 ISK. Bars for up to 2500, but we do see the first supply coming in here in the last 24 hours. It's gonna put some pressure on this. Photonic metamaterials still at a 1-year high as well. Buyers up to 25,000 ISK, very expensive at the moment, more than double the regular price. Plasmonic metamaterials, let's take a look at last week. Nothing too special here, also at a 1-year high. And this again shows this mixed picture, right? You've got crystalline carbonate going down, you've got this one going back down, Fullerites, lots of these are back under pressure, but then you've got some of these other ones that are still at their 1-year high points and are not being brought into the market. Ceramic fibers definitely back down as well a little bit. Terahertz though back up. So it's going to probably depend on the source that you need for that, but tungsten carbide actually working its way back up to 250 on some increased volumes here. So advanced moon materials, I would say again we have this mixed picture, right? We do see supplies start to form, start to come back to the market, so there is going to be some activity there, but there are others that are back at their 1-year highs, indicating that yeah, the market could still settle much higher than what they did before the expansion. Is there like raw moon materials? Yeah, that's these. We'll take a quick look at those. These oof, that's actually pretty early on here. Then we've got August, where you could see some speculation, but atmospheric gas definitely still pretty high up. Volumes are starting to come in, and is that on the seller side of things? No, not really. So here definitely still at a very high premium. Cadmium, that one went back down to, I would say, a normal price. Now it's picking back up here all of a sudden, but that doesn't look too crazy. Fresh supply, yeah, you do see some come in here. So this again, already the first two, high point, back to a regular one with some volatility. It's again a pretty mixed picture. Here is cesium, settling but not to the low point. Still, you can see that pressure that's been building here. Chromium, same thing. Cobalt also a little bit, nowhere near the 2k though. Here we see some massive volatility, back down to 60k on dysprosium. Currently selling for 71,000, not completely out of line. You're paying a premium, but nothing too crazy. Evaporate deposits actually on the way up again, so this again showing the difference. Hafnium, okay, definitely a higher price band, but nothing too crazy. Hydrocarbons, volumes picking up here as well. Maybe we should take a quick look at that. Yeah, at the tail end here I can see higher volumes across the board on these. Mercury here, increased volumes, price went down, back up a little bit. Neodymium next. Platinum. Look at that, Promethium is very interesting in my opinion. 40k, we went back down to 40k, and now we're actually back up to 60,000. So this is quite a bit of volatility. The volumes are picking up, so this is a lot of buying, but this was a lot of selling, a lot of stuff coming to the market. So yeah, it's a mixed picture still. For me, it's still not clear which way we are going to settle. Here's technetium, definitely up in price, but again also settling back down a little bit. See the first volumes coming in. Thallium here, some titanium. Titanium actually very close to an okay price. And then on let's see here, what's that? 2,300, 2,000. Bars are at 3,500. Yeah, this is back up on massive buying all of a sudden. Then we've got tungsten, definitely paying a premium for that, and vanadium. also on its way back up after actually going back down. So this is, yeah, the moon materials, guys. It's still very tricky. The Tech2 market is also showing this. It's still a mixed picture. I couldn't tell you if we're going to actually crash back down and settle back where we were before, maybe even lower, or if this premium state or this higher price band is here to stay. Yeah, things in NOSEC still need to basically find their ways, and then eventually the supplies need to find their way back to Cheetah as well, of course, for this to show up in ETH Talk. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.